The 3,000-year ceasefire is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only laugh part for 3,000 years. The stars had been quiet. Not peaceful exactly. There were still skirmishes, trade disputes, and the occasional supernova used as a warning shot. But humanity had kept to itself. Earth, Mars, the moons of Jupiter, even the far-out colonies near Alpha Centauri, all followed the same unspoken rule. Don't poke the Galactic Council. The Council was made up of dozens of ancient species, each older than human civilization, each convinced they were the guardians of order in the galaxy. And for 3 millennia, they had left humans alone, bound by a ceasefire signed in blood, ink, and mutual confusion. That changed on a Tuesday. It started with a signal, not a radio burst or a laser pulse, but a full-spectrum broadcast that flooded every screen, speaker, and neural implant from Neptune's orbit to the streets of Kansas City. People stopped mid-step. Cars halted in traffic. Even the automated drones delivering pizza in Seattle hovered in place, waiting. On every display, a figure appeared, tall, shimmering with limbs like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed like dying stars. This was Vrelthax, High Emissary of the Galactic Council. His voice wasn't spoken. It was felt, vibrating in bones and teeth, translated instantly by every device into calm, formal English. "Humanity," he began. "The ceasefire is ended. You have violated the sacred balance. Your expansion is unchecked. Your technology defies natural law. Your culture spreads chaos like a virus. The Council has watched long enough. We declare war." He listed their grievances. Human ships had been seen near forbidden zones. Human scientists had published papers on temporal mechanics that made Council elders faint. Human music, especially something called heavy metal, had been detected leaking into neutral systems, causing panic among young Zenthari hatchlings. Worst of all, humans kept asking questions, not polite ones, the kind that made ancient empires question their own existence. Vrelthax finished with a warning. "Surrender your fleets. Dismantle your outposts. Return to your homeworld, or face total annihilation." Then the screen went dark. Silence lasted exactly 7 seconds. In Houston, Dale McKinney sat in mission control, coffee in hand, watching the replay on loop. He blinked. Then he snorted. "They're serious?" He asked no one in particular. His coworker, Lisa Tran, leaned over from the next console, arms crossed. "I think they are," she said, but she was smiling. "They really think we're scared of them." On Mars Colony Alpha, Ben Carter wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his glove. He'd been checking the tomato vines in Greenhouse 7 when the alert blared. Now he stood in the common room with a dozen other colonists, watching Vrelthax's face loom over them. When the message ended, someone muttered, "So, does this mean we cancel movie night?" Ben just shook his head and walked back outside. "Nah," he called over his shoulder. "I've got tomatoes to water." In Tokyo, a teenage boy named Kai paused his hoverboard midair, replaying the broadcast on his wristband. He showed it to his little sister. "See space bullies," he said. She giggled. They looked like shiny trash cans. Even in the quiet corners of Earth, the reaction was the same. Not fear, not panic, amusement, mild annoyance at worst. At the United Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva, Commander Elena Rodriguez watched the recording 3 times. Her staff waited for orders. She sipped her tea, set the cup down, and said, "They forgot to knock." The Galactic Council expected dread. They expected humans to scramble, to beg, to activate long-dormant weapons. Instead, social media exploded with memes. One showed Vrelthax photoshopped onto a birthday cake with the caption, "Happy War Day." Another featured a cartoon human offering the emissary a cup of coffee and saying, "You sure you don't want to talk this out?" Meanwhile, in a small town in Nebraska, Harry Wilkins sat on his porch rocking slowly in his old wooden chair. His grandson, Leo, ran up with a tablet. "Grandpa, aliens just declared war." Harry squinted at the screen, then chuckled. "Oh, them again." "Again?" Leo asked, confused. "Yep. Happened before. Long time ago. They showed up all shiny and loud, talking about order and rules. Your great-grandma told them to pipe down and offered them pie. They left. Pie? Cherry. Best in the county." Back in orbit, aboard the observation station Juno 9, Elena finally stood. She walked to the main viewport and looked out at the blackness between stars. Somewhere out there, the Council's armada was already gathering. Billions of ships, weapons that could crack planets like eggs, fleets that had never lost a battle in 10,000 years. She didn't feel fear. She felt something closer to pity. Because humans remembered things the Council had forgotten. They remembered the old days. The real old days. Before the ceasefire. Before the quiet. Before everyone assumed humanity was just another young species playing with fire. But that was a story for another time. For now, Elena tapped her comm. "Dale, how's that new solar lens coming along?" "Ready when you are," Dale replied. "Though I doubt we'll need it. These guys look like they scare easy." "Maybe," Elena said, "but let's be polite. After all, they did take the time to send a formal invitation." Down on Earth in Austin, Carl Jenkins fired up his grill. His neighbor asked if he'd seen the news. "Sure did," Carl said, flipping a burger. "Aliens want to fight, fine by me. But they better not ruin my cookout." And so, as the galaxy held its breath, waiting for humanity's response, the answer came not in fire or fury, but in laughter, soft, steady, and utterly unafraid. The Council had made a mistake, a big one. They thought humans were sleeping, but humans had just been waiting to see if anyone would finally be rude enough to wake them up. The 3,000-year ceasefire is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only laugh part. While the Galactic Council prepared its war machine, humanity did something unexpected. They went to the library. Not a physical one, of course. Most of those had been turned into community gardens or drone repair shops. But the deep archives, buried beneath the moon's silent surface in vaults sealed since the last great silence, lay records no one had touched in centuries. Historians, retired engineers, and curious teenagers dug through dusty data crystals, searching for answers. Why had the ceasefire begun? What had humans done to earn 3,000 years of uneasy peace? The truth came from an unlikely place. A young archivist named Mia Garza, working the night shift at Lunar Archive Sector 9, stumbled on a file labeled Project Nap Time. It wasn't classified. It wasn't encrypted. It was just forgotten. She opened it out of boredom, expecting old schematics or supply logs. Instead, she found video logs, ship manifests, and personal journals from a time when Earth's sky wasn't just filled with satellites, but with starships that bent space like paper. In one grainy recording, a woman in a faded jumpsuit stood on the bridge of a vessel called the Odyssey. Her name was Captain Elise Morgan, and she looked tired. "Day 47 of the Quiet War," she said, rubbing her eyes. "The Zenthari keep calling us the Storm. The Krell say we broke physics on purpose. Honestly, we just wanted to see if we could." Behind her, a screen showed a fleet of alien ships retreating in panic. "They asked us to stop. We said okay. Not because we lost. Because arguing was exhausting." Mia's hands shook as she scrolled further. Humanity hadn't been primitive 3,000 years ago. They'd been terrifyingly advanced. They'd cracked the code of faster-than-light travel before most alien species had invented the wheel. They'd built shields that turned black holes into harmless light shows. They'd even toyed with rewriting local reality, just to see what would happen. And then, after a brief, messy encounter with the ancestors of the Galactic Council, they'd simply stopped, not out of fear, out of boredom. The ceasefire wasn't a surrender. It was a timeout. A cosmic, "we'll let you kids play while we take a nap." Humans had agreed to stay within their solar system, to mute their signals, to pretend they were just another developing species. Why? Because the elders, scientists, philosophers, even farmers, had decided the galaxy wasn't ready for them. Not yet. Back on Earth, Maya sent the files to every major news outlet, university, and Grandma's tablet. Within hours, the truth spread. People weren't shocked. They were nostalgic. "Oh yeah," said Harry Wilkins, sipping lemonade on his porch. "I heard my grandpa talk about that," said the aliens cried when we turned off our engines. In Houston, Dale McKinney watched the old footage and laughed. "So that's why the old reactors have 'Do Not Wake' stickers." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council remained unaware. Their historians had erased the real story. In their records, the ceasefire was a victory, a moment when the savage humans finally bowed to superior order. They'd built their entire identity on that lie. Now, as their armada gathered at the edge of human space, they believed they were marching against a weak, disorganized species that had overstepped its place. They were wrong. On Mars, Ben Carter paused his tomato harvest when a message popped up on his wristband. It was a declassified schematic of the solar defense grid, activated only once 3,000 years ago. He whistled. So that's what those old towers are for. In Geneva, Elena Rodriguez reviewed the archives with quiet awe. She saw blueprints for weapons that didn't destroy, they rearranged. Ships that didn't fight, they confused. Entire battle strategies based not on force but on making the enemy question their own existence. They didn't lose the war, she murmured. They got tired of winning. As the Council's fleet crossed the Oort cloud, their commanders grew confident. Scouts reported no defenses, no patrols, no signs of panic. Just a few drifting buoys playing strange music, something upbeat with accordions. Relthax himself stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Order. They do not understand the gravity of this moment, he told his generals. They think this is a game. One of his lieutenants hesitated. Sir, what if they remember? Relthax scoffed. They are children. They forgot their own history. But humans hadn't forgotten. They'd just chosen not to talk about it. In Austin, Carl Jenkins grilled burgers while explaining to his neighbor how Earth's magnetic field wasn't natural anymore. We tweaked it, he said, flipping a patty. Just a little. Makes solar flares bounce off like rain off a roof. Why didn't anyone tell us? The neighbor asked. Would you have believed it? Carl grinned. Back on the moon, Mia kept digging. She found logs from the final meeting before the ceasefire. Human delegates hadn't begged. They'd yawned. One had offered the alien ambassadors cookies and said, Look, you guys need to chill. We'll stay home if it makes you feel better. But don't poke us, okay? The aliens had agreed, relieved. They'd gone home and told their people they'd tamed the storm. Now the storm was awake and it wasn't angry. It was mildly annoyed. As the Council's first wave entered the solar system, Elena gave a quiet order. Activate passive welcome protocol. Nothing exploded. No lasers fired. Instead, every human-made object in the outer system, satellites, mining drones, even old space junk, began broadcasting the same message in 50 languages, including several the Council hadn't spoken in millennia. Hello? Please don't shoot. We're having a cookout. You're welcome to join, but bring your own buns. The Council ship slowed. Confusion rippled through their ranks. This wasn't resistance. It was hospitality, and it terrified them more than any weapon. Relthax stared at the message on his screen. What does buns mean? No one answered. On Earth, Lisa Tran watched the alien fleet hesitate on her monitor. She leaned back in her chair. They're scared of a barbecue invite, she said, shaking her head. Classic. The truth was out now. Humanity hadn't been hiding. They'd been waiting. Not for war, but for someone to finally be rude enough to interrupt their peace. And now that someone had, humans weren't reaching for weapons. They were reaching for the grill. The 3,000-year ceasefire is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only laugh. Part 3. The Galactic Council's armada stretched across the edge of the solar system, like a storm cloud made of steel and pride. Billions of ships, each one humming with weapons that could shatter moons, hovered in perfect formation. Their commanders expected resistance. They prepared for desperate human fighters. Last minute pleas. Maybe even a suicidal charge. What they got was silence. And polka music. From the outer rings of Saturn to the lonely rocks beyond Pluto, every human-made buoy, probe, and abandoned mining rig played the same cheerful tune. A bouncy, accordion-heavy melody that had been looping for hours. It wasn't a signal. It wasn't a threat. It was just music. Relthax stood on the bridge of the Eternal Order, his crystalline fingers twitching. Is this mockery? He asked, voice tight. His tactical officer checked the scans again. No weapons detected. No energy spikes. No fleet movements, just music. Then silence it, Relthax ordered. A squadron of destroyer-class vessels peeled off from the main fleet and fired a synchronized pulse meant to disable all electronic signals in the region. The pulse hit the nearest buoy and bounced back, twisted. Instead of going silent, the buoy now played the polka tune twice as loud with added tuba. On Mars Colony Alpha, Ben Carter heard the report over lunch. He chuckled into his soup. They tried to mute the party. Bad idea. In Geneva, Elena Rodriguez watched the alien fleet fumble on her screen. She didn't issue orders. She didn't need to. The solar system itself was already responding. Centuries ago, humans had woven subtle tech into the fabric of space around their home. Not as weapons, but as safeguards. Like a house with smart lights and automatic locks, the system simply reacted to rudeness. When the Council's ships crossed the heliopause without asking, the local space-time field shifted. Gently, almost politely. One moment, the lead destroyer was firing another pulse. The next it vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed, just gone. Then it reappeared, parked neatly in a stable orbit around Saturn, right between two icy rings. Its engines offline, its crew unharmed but very confused. Then another ship disappeared. And another. Within minutes, the entire first wave of the Council's attack force was gone, reassembled like misplaced toys on Saturn's rings, all facing the same direction, as if arranged by a careful hand. Relthak stared at the display. What is this? It's like they were moved, his science officer whispered. Not by force, by suggestion. Back on Earth, Dale McKinney leaned over his console in Houston, sipping cold coffee. Oops, he muttered, though he hadn't touched a single control. The system ran itself. It always had. Meanwhile, Lisa Tran piloted a small scout ship near Jupiter, just doing routine checks. She saw the alien ships blink out and reappear. She tapped her comm.
Hey, Elena, you seeing this?
I am, came the calm reply. They're being shown to the guest parking. On Nebraska's plains, Harry Wilkins pointed up at the night sky. See that bright ring? That's not Saturn's doing. That's us saying, please behave. His grandson Leo squinted. So the aliens are in timeout? Pretty much. The Council's confusion turned to panic. Their second wave advanced cautiously, scanning for traps. They found none. Only more music, now accompanied by soft voiceovers in ancient Council dialects. Welcome to the solar system. Speed limit 1 light-year per hour, no weapons past the asteroid belt. Thank you. When they ignored the warning and fired again, the results were even stranger. Their gravity bombs, designed to crush planets into dust, detonated harmlessly. Instead of warping space, they produced small glowing orbs that floated gently toward the nearest human outpost. On Mars, Ben caught one in a net. It popped open like a soap bubble and released a single seed packet labeled Moonflowers, Plant in Shade. He planted it right there in Greenhouse 7. The Council's warriors, trained for millennia to face monsters, were now being handed gardening tips. Vrelthax demanded answers. His historians scoured their own records, searching for any mention of human defenses. They found nothing, because there were no defenses, not in the way the Council understood. Humans hadn't built walls, they'd built a home, and homes don't fight, they host. On the observation station Juno 9, Elena finally stood. She walked to the viewport and watched the alien fleet hover, lost and uncertain. She tapped her wristband. Dale, how's the solar lens? Charged and bored, he replied. Good. Keep it that way. We don't want to hurt them. Just remind them we're here. Down in Austin, Carl Jenkins flipped a burger and glanced at the sky. They're still out there, huh? Yep, said his neighbor, watching a live feed on his tablet. Looks like they don't know whether to fight or ask for directions. Carl smiled. Give it time. They'll figure it out. As the hours passed, the Council's confidence crumbled. Their ships couldn't lock onto targets. Their comms filled with lullabies. Their navigation systems kept rerouting them toward the nearest space buoy that offered complimentary cosmic rays and light snacks. One young alien pilot, overwhelmed, opened a private channel to human space traffic control. What do you want from us? He asked, voice trembling. A calm voice replied, Nothing. Just don't litter. Back on Earth, people went about their day. Kids played in parks. Farmers harvested crops. Engineers fixed broken drones. No one was scared. No one was hiding. Because they knew the truth. The solar system wasn't a battlefield. It was a living room, and the guests had forgotten to take off their shoes. The Council had come to wage war on a species they thought was weak. Instead, they'd walked into a house where the furniture rearranged itself to keep them from tripping, and that was far more terrifying than any weapon. The 3,000-year ceasefire is over. Aliens declare war. But humans only laugh. Part 4. The Galactic Council did not understand what was happening. Their weapons failed. Their ships misbehaved. Their own thoughts felt fuzzy, as if someone had turned down the volume on reality. They had come to crush a primitive species, but instead they were being gently corrected, like toddlers who'd drawn on the walls with plasma cannons. Vrelthax called an emergency war council aboard the Eternal Order. His generals argued in hushed, panicked tones. Some insisted humanity was using forbidden mind tech. Others claimed it was divine punishment. One young officer, barely out of training, whispered, "What if they're not fighting because they don't need to? He was silenced immediately, but the idea lingered like smoke. Meanwhile, humanity responded not with violence but with overwhelming quiet competence. When the Council tried to hack into Earth's networks to disable defenses, they found no firewalls, just an open door. Inside, their own code was rewritten in real time, not erased but transformed. Their battle algorithms became poetry. Their targeting system started composing love letters to distant stars. One alien programmer stared at his screen in horror as his war protocol output a perfect limerick about neutron stars and unrequited gravity. In Houston, Dale McKinney watched the logs and grinned. They brought a sword to a poetry slam. On Mars, Ben Carter received a strange alert. A Council drone had landed near his greenhouse, its weapons disarmed, its hull now painted with cheerful sunflowers. It beeped softly and extended a tray holding a single cup of something steaming. Ben sniffed it. Smells like chamomile. He took a sip. It was perfect. Back in Geneva, Elena Rodriguez finally sent a message, not a threat, not a demand, just a note. It appeared on every Council ship's main screen in their native tongue. We're not interested in your war, but if you'd like to trade recipes or discuss quantum gardening, we're open. The message spread through the fleet like a virus. Some commanders deleted it in rage. Others read it twice. A few saved it. Then came the gravity bombs, the Council's last resort. Planet crackers capable of collapsing entire worlds into singularities. They launched 3 toward Earth, Jupiter, and Mars. The human response was so calm it felt like a yawn. Near Jupiter, Lisa Tran watched the incoming warheads on her display. She didn't panic. She tapped a single key labeled Redirect. The bombs didn't explode. They didn't vanish. They simply changed purpose. Their destructive cores unraveled and reformed into harmless, glowing garden gnomes, each one smiling, wearing tiny hats and floating gently toward the nearest colony dome. One landed in Ben's tomato patch. He named it Gary. On Earth, Carl Jenkins found a gnome on his grill. Huh, he said. Cute. Vrelthax could not believe his eyes. His most feared weapons had been turned into lawn decorations. His pride cracked like thin ice. Desperate, he ordered the flagship's main weapon, a reality lance capable of unmaking atoms, to fire directly at the moon. The shot left the barrel in a blaze of violet light. Then it stopped. Mid-flight. The beam curled like a shy cat, looped twice and transformed into a ribbon of soft light that wrapped around the moon like a scarf. The lunar surface shimmered, and for a moment, the words "Thank you for visiting" glowed in every language ever spoken by humans. Silence fell over the Eternal Order's bridge. Back on the observation station Juno 9, Elena sipped her tea. They really don't get it, do they? Her aide shook his head. They think power is about destruction. We think it's about choice, and that was the heart of it. Humanity could have ended the war in seconds. They could have folded space, erased fleets, rewritten the Council's history with a thought. But they didn't, because winning wasn't the point. Understanding was. So they kept responding with kindness wrapped in impossibility. When a Council scout ship strayed too close to Uranus, it didn't get shot down. It got a guided tour. Automated buoys lit up, forming a path of soft light. A calm voice explained the planet's weather patterns, offered historical facts, and ended with, "Please enjoy your visit, and remember to recycle." On Nebraska's porch, Harry Wilkins told Leo, "It's like teaching a dog not to chew the furniture. You don't hit it. You give it a better toy." "So the aliens are the dog?" Leo asked. "More like the puppy who thought the couch was a chew toy." As the days passed, cracks appeared in the Council's unity. Younger officers began questioning their elders. Why had they never been taught the truth? Why had they been raised to fear a species that only offered tea and gardening tips? One ship, a small medical frigate, broke formation. It sent a simple request, "May we speak?" Elena approved the channel. The alien doctor on the other end looked exhausted. "We were told you were monsters," he said. "But you keep giving us flowers." "We don't do monsters," Elena replied. "We do neighbors." That single conversation spread. More ships hesitated. More commanders lowered their weapons. Vrelthax tried to restore order, but his voice no longer carried weight. His authority had been undone not by force, but by absurdity. How do you command an army when your enemy keeps turning your bombs into bird feeders? In Austin, Carl grilled burgers as news of the fraying alien fleet played on his wall screen. His neighbor asked, "Do you think they'll leave?" "Eventually," Carl said. "Once they realize we're not mad, just disappointed." And that was the final blow. Not anger, not revenge. Disappointment. The council had expected a dragon. They found a librarian who'd caught them shouting in the reading room, and no one fears a librarian more than a loud child. The 3,000-year ceasefire is over. Aliens declare war, but humans only laugh. Part 5. Vrelthak stood alone on the observation deck of the Eternal Order. The once proud armada now floated in disarray around Saturn's rings, its ships quiet, its warriors confused. The war was over. Though no one had fired a single shot that landed, the council had come to conquer, but instead they had been firmly shown the door. And now, Vrelthax had a choice. Return home in shame or do something no emissary of the council had ever done before. He could ask for help. He sent a request. Not a demand. Not a threat. Just 3 words, may we talk? The reply came within seconds. Not from a war room or a command center, but from an address tagged Backyard, Austin, Texas, Earth. So Vrelthax went. He arrived not in a battleship, but in a small shuttle painted with peace glyphs. He stepped onto soft grass blinking in the warm sunlight. Before him stood an old man in a faded t-shirt and apron, flipping burgers on a smoking grill. This was Carl Jenkins. "You must be the shiny one from the broadcast," Carl said, not looking up. "Burger? I've got veggie ones too if you don't eat meat." Vrelthax hesitated. His species didn't eat. They absorbed light, but he nodded anyway. "I would like to understand." Carl handed him a plate with a bun and a glowing blue patty made from algae and moon-grown spices. "Sit." They sat on lawn chairs under a wide oak tree. Birds chirped. A drone buzzed past, delivering a package to the neighbor. Vrelthax stared at it all like it was magic. "Why did you not fight us?" he finally asked. Carl took a bite of his burger. "Because fighting you wouldn't fix anything. You weren't evil, just loud, and a little rude. We declared war. Yep, and we laughed. Not because we thought you were weak. Because we remembered what you forgot." Vrelthax frowned. "What did we forget?" "That you're not the center of the universe," Carl said gently. "None of us are. Not even us. We all just share the same sky." He explained how humanity had stepped back 3,000 years ago, not out of fear, but out of respect. They'd seen young civilizations like the Council's ancestors trying to build order from chaos, and they didn't want to crush that hope. So they played small. They let the galaxy grow up. "You thought the ceasefire meant we lost," Carl said. "But it meant we trusted you to figure things out on your own. We just hoped you'd learn manners before showing up with bombs." Vrelthax looked down at his hands. For the first time in his long life, he felt small. Not weak, just young. Back in orbit, Elena Rodriguez watched the meeting from Juno 9. She smiled. He's finally listening. On Mars, Ben Carter watered his tomatoes, now growing beside a row of moonflowers from the alien seed packet. Gary the gnome watched from the corner, smiling as always. In Houston, Dale McKinney shut down the solar lens for good. "Guess we won't be needing you today," he told the machine. The rest of the council fleet waited in silence. One by one, their ships began sending messages. Not battle plans, but questions. "How do you grow food in 0G? What is jazz? Can you teach us to make the polka stop? But maybe keep the tuba?" Earth responded with open arms. Schools opened virtual classrooms for alien students. Farmers shared hydroponic designs. Musicians uploaded playlists labeled for confused space visitors. Lisa Tran even gave a tour of Jupiter's storms to a group of wide-eyed alien cadets, all watching from their shuttles. "It's not scary," she told them. "It's just weather. Big, beautiful weather." As the days passed, the war became a memory. The Armada turned into a gathering. Ships that once carried weapons now carried gifts. Crystals that sang in sunlight. Fabrics that changed color with mood. Stories carved into light. Vrelthax stayed in Austin for a week. He learned to flip burgers badly, watched fireflies at dusk, and listened to Carl talk about stars not as territory but as neighbors. On his last night, he asked, "What do you want from us now?" Carl leaned back in his chair. "Peace, curiosity, maybe a few good stories. And if you ever feel like declaring war again, just knock first." Vrelthax nodded. "We will." When he returned to his ship, he carried more than just memories. He carried a small potted moonflower, a playlist called Earth's Greatest Hits, and a handwritten note that read, "You're not late. You're just learning. Welcome to the neighborhood." The fleet departed slowly, not in retreat but in wonder. As they crossed the edge of the solar system, the polka music stopped. In its place, a soft human voice said, "Safe travels. Visit an Itami." On Nebraska's porch, Harry Wilkins watched the stars with Leo. "They'll be back," he said. "As friends?" Leo asked. "As students," Harry replied. "And maybe someday as teachers, too." Back in Geneva, Elena closed her logbook. The crisis was over. No lives lost. No worlds broken. Just a misunderstanding cleared up over burgers and honesty. In Austin, Carl cleaned his grill. The coals glowed red, then faded to ash. He looked up at the sky, where the last of the alien ships winked out of sight. Humanity hadn't won a war. They'd prevented one. Not with weapons, but with patience. Not with fear, but with laughter, because they knew the truth. The strongest thing in the universe isn't a weapon or a shield. It's the choice to be kind when you don't have to be. And somewhere in the quiet dark between stars, the galaxy finally understood. Humans don't laugh because they're weak. They laugh because they've already won.